What's up, buddies? This is my 6th video in my series recapping the Resident Evil games, and coincidentally, this time it's RE6. Now, a lot of people don't like RE6, and to them I have to say, that's valid. There's a lot of reasons not to like this game, and much less reasons to like it, but I think it's alright. It was actually the first one I ever played. I remember when my mom bought me and my brother an Xbox 360, she told us to pick out some games we could play together, and among those were Halo 3 ODST, of course, Army of Two, and Resident Evil 6. We played it for like an hour before deciding to never play it again. Anyway, I usually do recaps at the start of these to fill in what happened in the previous games, but in this case there's so much I could tell you, but I don't really need to as the game tells you pretty much everything you need to know. So I'll just do the same and tell you the backstory of characters as they come up and as it's relevant. Now there's 4 campaigns in this game: Leon, Chris, Jake, and Ada, and I think that order is a valid ranking of how fun they actually are. Leon and Chris's are both pretty good, Jake's is very mid, and I think Ada's is just bad. All 4 campaigns happen simultaneously and intersect at various points, so I'm just going to jump around between all 4 to tell the story chronologically. Let's do it. So we start with Chris's second chapter, set in 2012 in the fictional Edonian Republic, although Edonia was a real place a long time ago. We play as Chris Redfield, former STARS agent, zombie outbreak survivor, and Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, or BSAA, veteran. His partner is Piers Nivens, which is a weird name that's always stuck with me for some reason. Chris is leading a whole squad here, however the only other notable BSAA agent here is this nerdy guy named Finn. Anyway, they're out here to fight the Edonian Liberation Army, who's trying to overthrow the government. That happens all the time, so why is the BSAA here? Well, the rebels are using a new kind of BOW called Juavos, which kind of translates into devil in Serbian. It's a made-up word like Magini from RE5, but that's what it's supposed to mean. Anyway, the BSAA are out here in fucking force. I mean, tens of helicopters, Humvees, and APCs. This level is super sick because Edonia is a shitty Eastern European country, so it looks straight out of World War II. The BSAA's response turns out to be necessary, as not far in their convoy is attacked by the ELA, and we get to meet some of these Juavos. They look just like normal humans except for the eyes. They behave like humans too, shooting guns and taking cover and all that. The only difference is that sometimes when you damage them, they'll mutate into more insect-like forms. These are made with a new virus called the C virus, but we can talk more about that in a minute. The ELA's Juavos put up quite a fight. However, their secret weapon turns out to be this giant troll thing called an Ogroman, meaning huge in Serbian. I think Ogroman's design is one of my favorites in the series. However, from a BOW review perspective, they have a big problem. They have this feeding tube, or like, I don't know, charging cord, stuck into their backs, and when they deploy, they rip it off, also ripping out a giant fleshy organ that's vulnerable to damage. These are made with the C virus, probably in a similar fashion to RE4's El Gigante. Chris and Pierce have to hold out until Finn can bring the APC around and scare the ogre off. With the APC backing them up, they continue to fight through the city streets, eventually arriving at a bridge with a downed soldier on it. That soldier was probably downed by the tank on the bridge, but that's just my opinion. Chris says that they'll leave no man behind, which is a little weird because of the BSAA's actions later, but first they have to get rid of that tank. Piers blows it up using an oil tanker, then they have to wait for Finn to drag the guy on top of the bridge so they can get him out. When they do though, this tank/train car thing rolls up to oppress them some more. The ELA also starts dropping parachuting Juavo from cargo planes above them, which is insane. Now, tanks and mounted train cars aren't exactly what I think of when I think Resident Evil, but by collapsing the bridge they drop the train car into the river below. So the ELA seems to be losing. Let's switch over to Jake Mueller and his story. So Jakey here is a mercenary, and a pretty good one too, but he's now fighting in his home country for the ELA. He and his company inject themselves with something that's supposed to boost their energy. Heroin, maybe. Actually no, it's the C virus, and one of his former comrades now attacks him. Now a Juavo. It seems like Juavo are naturally aggressive towards non-infected, kinda like Plagas from RE4. Jake pieces up his former friend just as Sherry Birkin appears. Sherry escaped Raccoon City in RE2 with the help of Leon Kennedy and Chris's sister, Claire Redfield. Her father, William Birkin, created the G-Virus, which he then infected himself with, and then later infected his daughter. She was cured by Claire and her mother, and they barely managed to escape before the government nuked the city. She's now working for the National Security Agency, or the NSA, but her and Jake don't have much time to talk. She mentions that he has antibodies for the C-Virus that they could use to save the world, but they have to flee a horde of Juavo. Jake and Sherry make their way through the city as the BSA is tearing shit up outside. The BSAA marks Jake and Sherry as enemies, so they have to fight the ELA while avoiding chopper attacks from the BSAA. They finally get to a bunker and have a moment of respite where Jake lists his prices.
I want 200,000 up front, another 200 when this is over. Oh, and BOWs, those are extra. An additional grand each.
I'm not here to hire you.
What?
Sorry bro, but for 200,000 you better do a little more than just fight for me. Anyway, Sherry tells Jake they need his blood and antibodies ASAP before a mass C-Virus outbreak. Jake's second price is no less insane.
$50 million.
What?
Cash. Non-negotiable. That'll get you one pint.
Sherry cannot confirm or deny that the government will pay him 50 mil, so they just continue on for now. Jake can do these crazy flips and shit that no other character can do, including Leon, but he's probably just being humble. They make their way into a series of underground tunnels and witness this.
Alright, where to? What's the matter? What's the matter?
That thing you just saw is called Ustanak, which means uprising in Serbian. He looks a lot like a T-virus tyrant, but where those look classy, he looks like a hillbilly on meth. You might be able to guess by now, but he's also made with the C-virus, as it is a very versatile virus. Ustanak is missing a hand, which he replaced with a giant grabby prosthetic, among other things later. Jake and Sherry have no choice but to flee as their attacks have little to no effect on him. They escape into a warehouse only for him to quickly catch up, and one of many boss fights with Usti starts. He shrugs off bullets like they're a cool breeze, and the best way to damage him is to use the explosive barrels scattered around the warehouse. With enough of them, Ustanak stumbles into a pillar and knocks Jake and Sherry down out of his reach. Jake trauma dumps on Sherry until they eventually step outside right into the BSAA's path. Chris recognizes her, and he also seems to recognize Jake in some way. Before Piers and Jake can fight each other, the LA deploys yet another Augur man off a helicopter to stop the BSA from destroying their anti-air guns. Chris, Piers, Jake, and Sherry all have to fight the thing while Finn plants charges to destroy the guns. All you have to do is shoot its exposed organ until it drops a knee, after which Jake/Chris will climb onto its back, rip a spike off it, and jab it into the organ. The Augur man reacts about as you would expect, having its bones ripped out and stuck back into it, and it only takes a couple of those to kill it and melt it into a giant pile of goo. After 2 of the guns are down though, the Augur man from before returns, his organ having receded back into his body. Well, that's no problem, because now Chris can just rip it right back out and continue plunging his own bones into its internal organs. Once all of the guns are down, the BSA hits it with some artillery from above, finally clearing the way to the ELA's headquarters. With it down, Chris calls Jake and Sherry a chopper to take them to safety, still recognizing Jake in some way. Piers objects to letting Jake get away, but they all continue on to a mansion where they'll hopefully find the ELA's leadership. The interior is covered with these human cocoons, but Finn detects a life sign among all the nastiness. They catch a glimpse of a well-dressed woman and have to chase her through the mansion into another room full of cocoons. They start to hatch and these large armored creatures crawl out. They're called Napad, which means attack in Serbian. That's fitting because they are very aggressive, however their hide is bulletproof. It's not fist-proof though, as my way of killing them was always stunning them with a flash grenade and then punching the shit out of them. Doing that, or hitting them with an explosive, reveals the sensitive muscle tissue beneath and allows them to be killed. These cocoons are the result of another C-virus mutation, and some Jawar we kill later won't die, but instead will begin their metamorphosis. C-virus actually stands for chrysalid virus, and the virus was made by crossing the G-virus, which causes cancerous levels of growth, and the T. veronica virus, which causes giant flame-blooded insect creatures. Crossing them appears to create giant, flame-blooded, rapidly mutating insect creatures. The only major exception to this is Ustanak. Anyway, beyond the Napad, they find that woman again. She claims to just work here, but unbeknownst to Chris and Piers, this is Ada Wong. Ada is a mercenary, kinda like Jake, however she's more of a spy. She was employed multiple times by Albert Wesker, the main villain of the other games, to steal BOW samples for him. Notably, the G-virus from Raccoon City and a Plaga from Spain. What she's doing here though is nobody's business but hers, but she tells the BSA about a secretive organization called Neo Umbrella who gave the ELA the C-virus. Chris, Piers, and Finn decide to escort Ada out for more questioning, however they find that the rest of the cocoons have hatched and the building is crawling with Napad. Ada helps them escape, but the next room has yet another new C-virus creature in it. These lizard-like things are called Strelak, which means shooter. That's very accurate as they love to run around and shoot spikes at you. These enemies are super annoying, but once they get past them, Ada betrays the BSAA. She locks a door, separating Chris and Piers from the rest, then hitting the squad with a C-virus needle grenade. Chris and Piers watch helplessly as Finn and the others are encased in cocoons and immediately start hatching into Napads. The one that used to be Finn starts caving Chris's chest in, but Piers manages to drag him away with at least some of his ribs still intact. Chris will need to spend some time in the hospital, but Jake and Sherry get on their way to the NSA's meetup, with Sherry confirming that Jake will get $50 million for his blood. That's what she wants him to believe anyway. There's almost no way the government would agree to that. They'd probably just put a bag over his head and take him to a black site to take as much blood as they want before they pay him a penny. Well, Jake doesn't have to worry about that because Ustanak is back and he's somehow clinging on to the helicopter. He destroys the one they're on and they have to escape to the adjacent one, only to discover how it is that Ustanak got up here. Neo Umbrella is attacking the BSA with their own set of attack choppers, and Ustanak is clinging on to the bottom of them. He's replaced his prosthetic with a minigun hand, and the two have to shoot down the choppers holding him as Ustanak could not care less about the hundreds of bullets going into his face. It doesn't work though, and they can barely manage to shoot Usti off the chopper before it goes down. The two manage to grab a parachute though and land in the snowy mountain range. On the way down though, Sherry got impaled and is currently bleeding to death on the ground. Jake knows that it's over for her, but she presses him to pull the shrapnel out anyway. When he does,
Don't say I didn't warn you.
Sherry regenerates, a product of her being infected and then vaccinated against the G-Virus. The helicopter crash ended up scattering a series of USB drives across the mountains though, all of which contain vital data on Jake's DNA. So I guess they already had this data on him, but they just needed actual physical blood. Now I don't know why that shit is spread across so many flash drives, but we need to go collect them during a blizzard. It's genuinely so hard to see during this entire section, and fitting with that, the two encounter a new C-Virus mutation. Hatching out of a cocoon are the Mesek, these flying bird monsters. Mesek means moon in Serbian, so it kinda works. They're not really that tough, but they are a pain when you can't see shit. Anyway, with 3 USB sticks in hand, Sherry and Jake take shelter in a nice little cabin where things get a little romantical.
Rendezvous.
Oh, wait!
They're interrupted though by more Juavo who arrive on snowmobiles. A firefight ensues and the commotion causes an avalanche, forcing Jake and Sherry to escape on the snowmobiles. This section is complete ass because it's so easy to just fly off a ledge on your snowmobile, die in the avalanche, or hit something. It's really bad, but they manage to escape the avalanche and find some kind of crystal mine. Ustanak is down here too with a new hand, this one a drill. Now somebody should have told him that crystal meth doesn't come from crystals in the earth, but he has these weird little bug things that alert him to your location if they see you. At a certain point you have to use remote bombs to distract him and allow Sherry to steal a key off a body. When they unlock the associated door, it makes a little beeping sound and alerts the big man. Jake and Sherry run from him, closing doors behind them only for Oos to drill right through them. They find a drill of their own though, and it's much bigger than his little dick-ass drill. Jake manages to press him back against the wall, drilling him into the wall and rearranging his guts. So Usanak might finally be dead. They emerge into the open near the NSA rendezvous, only to get attacked by more Juavo and... The drill definitely wounded Usti, but not by much. Ada appears and calls Jake.
So, you're Wesker Jr.
Wesker?
I didn't think Albert Wesker was the type to have kids, especially not with a random Edonian woman, but he would have had Jake when he was around 22 years old, so he would have just been an umbrella scientist at the time. Anyway, Ustanak's entire mission in Edonia was to capture Jake and bring him to Ada, so mission accomplished. Ustanak is basically Nemesis 2 if you couldn't tell. I think in some ways he's an improvement, while in others he's a downgrade. Well, 6 whole months later brings us to the first chapter in Ada's story. Will we finally find out why she captured Jake and killed all those BSAA soldiers? Maybe, but it starts with her boarding a submarine deep underwater in this big diving suit thing. Butt-ass naked, by the way. The submarine is a stolen US Navy sub that was hijacked by Neo Umbrella. We see a flashback of her avoiding some kind of authorities until she gets a phone call from Derek Simmons, the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. Him and Ada have some kind of history, but he sends Ada the location of the submarine and says that she'll find some kind of answers there as to why she's being hunted. Take note of the fact that Ada's wearing black pants and a red jacket, not like 6 months ago when she was wearing a purple dress. Anyway, the sub is staffed by these Neo Umbrella Juavo who are in these black manta-ass suits, and they're much more prone to mutation. These are the endgame enemies in both Chris and Jake's campaign, but Ada's just built different like that. You can try to stealth your way through using her crossbow, but I always got found eventually. Past them are these nice corridors where you have to solve a puzzle with this sick-ass edgy painting. Beyond that is a hallway guarded by sentry guns, however Simmons granted Ada the highest level of clearance for the ship, so they actually only target the Juavo. Seems counterintuitive to me, but at the end of the hallway is the intel Simmons wanted her to find. It's a mission brief on the whole business from 6 months ago. Her mission was to find Jake and Sherry and ensure that they made it to the NSA custody safely. The purpose of this was to prevent a vaccine from being made. That might not make sense coming from Simmons yet, but stay with me. The only problem is that Ada claims she never received those orders, and she was never in Edonia. Interesting, but the Juavo attack and we get to see some new mutations. One of them has the entire torso mutate into a massive set of pincers. They're called Glava Smek, which translates into the head hums, an insanely hard name. Another is called Telo Explosia, which means body explosion. Very fitting as the mutation turns their body into 2 coiled grubs that explode when they get close. Another are called Glava Begunak, which means fugitive head. Their head splits into 2 insect heads and they go crazy, charging straight at you and attacking non-stop. Finally is Glava Slews, which means head slime. Their head turns into a massive centipede or maybe ant type thing and shoots webs at you. Past all that bullshit, one of the dumbass Juavo shoots a gas tank and causes a detonation on the submarine, slowly starting to sink it. Ada has to flee, but she's halted by a new enemy type. Emerging from some cocoons are the Gnezdo, meaning nest in English. That's exactly what they are. There's one large bug hidden in the swarm and sometimes hiding around corners that commands a horde of smaller fly-like insects to devour you. They suck ass. Now, Ada's campaign is meant to be played last, which is why you face all the endgame enemies on the first mission. At the end of it all, preventing her escape is a voice-activated terminal that at first appears to be automated. Ada has to fend off an obscene amount of enemies while answering the question into the microphone. It becomes clear eventually that the voice is not automated, and somebody is actually interrogating Ada.
6 months ago, you performed experiments on humans in Edonia. You were following Simmons' orders, but it was your choice to do so. How do you plan to atone for your crimes?
Interesting story. Might want to do some fact-checking, though. I don't work for...
As she makes her way to the escape, Simmons radios again, telling her his whole little evil plan.
What's the matter? You still haven't figured it out. Allow me to clarify. Tomorrow the U.S. will suffer a bioterrorist attack. After that, China, and then major cities all around the world will suffer the same fate. At the hand of Neo Umbrella's very own Ada Wong.
Ada manages to escape the sub just as it sinks completely. Good thing too is we don't want potentially nuclear missiles falling into Simmons' hands. Let's switch over to Leon Kennedy, Raccoon City survivor and now veteran agent of the US government reporting directly to the president. Well, apparently not anymore because the president's dead. And this president is not the same one whose daughter Leon rescued in RE4, however he was the man who recruited Leon as an agent. The woman with Leon is Helena Harper, a Secret Service agent. Sorry Helena, but letting Leon shoot the president is exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do as a Secret Service agent, but Leon doesn't know this woman. She was in some way involved in what just happened, and she tells Leon they need to go to Tall Oaks Cathedral. Tall Oaks is another fictional city, and they're currently at a university the president was supposed to be giving a speech at. Hunnigan radios the two, saying that the C-Virus is rapidly spreading through the city, turning people into zombies rather than Juavo. If the C-Virus is ingested via gas, it makes you a zombie. If it's injected, it makes you into a Juavo. Leon and Helena make their way through the uni until they run into this guy who's desperately searching for his daughter, his only remaining family member. They find her, but she's not doing too good. As they take an elevator to the ground floor, the virus finally kills the man's daughter, and then she kills him. Leon and Helena have to fight through hordes of former uni students to make it to the main gate and then out onto the street where they steal a cop car. I mean, it's RE2 all over again. Leon's a shitty driver though when he first backs into a wall, then flips the car, giving both of them permanent whiplash. Good one, bro. They have to make their way into the sewers, which connects to the subway tunnels under the city. Hunnigan claims this is safer, but now they need to dodge both zombies and incoming trains.
What's the matter? Not a fan of sewers?
We see a cutscene of the president discussing with Leon his plan to uncover the US government's role in Raccoon City. Back in 1998, the government was funding Umbrella's research into BOWs for use in warfare, so they are very responsible. In a more direct way, they also conspired with the head G-Virus researcher, William Birkin, to steal the virus from Umbrella. The government sent in Delta Force, which prompted Umbrella to send in their own security service, both racing to capture Birkin and his virus. Umbrella managed to kill Delta Force, but when their own forces arrived, Birkin injected himself with the virus and turned into a monster, then spreading the T-Virus into the city sewers, causing the entire outbreak. So yes, the US government is probably just as responsible as Umbrella for the outbreak. Anyway, in the subway there's C-Virus infected dogs which look almost identical to T-Virus dogs. The only difference is where those were Dobermans, these are some kind of hound dog. Either way, this lady ends up getting mauled, but opens the way up to the street, where Leon and Helena find that the city has gone to complete shit. I mean, cars crashing all over, buildings on fire, just another day if it wasn't for the zombies. On the TV, they see a newscast talking about the stolen submarine that Ada just sunk. I don't know if that's more pressing news than the zombie outbreak, but maybe. As they continue, we encounter a new type of zombie, these throat goats called Shriekers. Their lungs have swollen up and grown to a massive size, causing them to have the giant neck. This gives them the ability to let out ear-piercing shrieks that call other zombies. The best way to deal with them is to destroy their lungs, which poke out of their skin when inflated. Past the Shrieker, Leon and Helena find a group of survivors desperately fighting for their lives. The group is made up of a cop, a domestic abuser, and those two are not the same person surprisingly, and the abuser's girlfriend. It was actually the cop's first day, so maybe we have another Leon Kennedy on the rise, as it was also his first day as a cop back in Raccoon City. Leon and Helena help them out by detonating a gas station, killing all the zombies and allowing their escape. They escape into a gun shop. Nice place to be at a time like this, but the owner won't let them shelter upstairs though, until they clear the zombies out from outside his shop. The crew fights for a while until the wife beater steals his girl's gun and tries to escape, but doesn't make it far. That thing that just mauled him is called a bloodshot, and zombies will sometimes mutate into those when they take enough damage. They lose all their skin and grow massive sharp teeth. They look a lot like T-virus lickers, who were created when the zombie ate enough biomass, but the wiki compares them to crimson heads, which some T-virus zombies mutated into after taking enough damage. They're tough as shit, but if you do enough damage, some kind of organ swells up from their body that you can shoot. With the zombies killed downstairs, the gun shop owner finally lets them upstairs, only for more zombies to attack. He says that he has a bus coming for him soon though, so they should have to survive until then. That becomes much harder when this giant thing busts in. A gigantic, morbidly obese zombie. These things might have the best name in any Resident Evil game. They're called Whoppers. This is the most American zombie I've ever seen. And if you've ever been to Walmart, you've probably seen a couple people that look just like this.
Shall declare independence. What do you mean I'm not allowed in the Walmart?
Whoppers are very strong, and it and the many bloodshots that back it up force the gang onto the roof, where even more zombies and another Whopper attacks. The bus finally arrives, but another big man blocks from leaving. The gun shop owner and his son both get dragged out of the bus and die. He was actually a super fun character. I wouldn't have minded him sticking around a little longer. Finally though, the bus overwhelms the Whopper's girth and manages to escape the city, heading for Tall Oaks Cathedral, where some survivors have gathered. They talk to Hunnigan on the way and learn that over 90% of the nearly 80,000 residents of Tall Oaks have become evil. Hunnigan says that Neo and Umbrella, the same ones who took that submarine, were behind the attack. Derek Simmons has arrived to personally oversee the situation, and Helena has a very visible reaction to hearing his name. Wasn't this the guy who ordered Ada to go to Edonia 6 months ago and find Jake? Is he with Neo and Umbrella? Maybe. But the bus gets derailed by a horde of zombies and ends up falling off a cliff, dumping Leon and Helena into a graveyard outside the cathedral. Everyone else on the bus dies as it goes up in flames, so I guess that other cop won't follow in Leon's footsteps. The zombies in the cemetery are predictably all rotted out and fragile, but as they near the entrance of the church, a dog runs away with the keys to the gate. The chase has Leon and Helena get separated. Leon speculates that she'd leave him behind if she had the chance, as she might have been involved in some way with the president's death. She doesn't though, and they both finally make it to the church doors, only for the survivors inside to refuse them entry. Even worse, the church's bells start to ring, bringing a horde of zombies to the door. They fight many bloodshots, dogs, and shriekers until finally someone inside the church convinces the others to let them in. This will prove to have been a mistake in a minute. There's actually quite a few survivors in the church, all of which believe that the emergency services and the BSAA will be coming to save them soon. Helena says that there's a secret entrance under the church's altar, but to get it they need to find multiple of these Madonna statues. Not the singer, statues of Mary, Jesus' mom. They first open a side path filled with these statue traps, which is a strange thing for a church to have if they're not trying to hide something. That opens the path to a set of church bells Leon and Helena have to ring to unlock the final Madonna statue. They return to the main room and open the entrance, but as the altar opens up, that giant white gas bag thing is called a lepotica, which means beauty in Serbia. Now they must have different standards of beauty over there, but they kind of look like a walking beehive, except rather than being filled with bees, their bodies are filled with gas. These are the main vector in spreading the C-virus, as their body produces the gas that infects people. Shooting them releases little jolts of it right into your face. Leon and Helena are unfazed though, because they're the main characters. Now as far as I know, Leon and Helena never actually discuss how it was directly their fault that most of these survivors in the church die, and that fucking thing never would have gotten out had they not released it. But it is out, so the most they can do now is try to kill it before it kills everybody. Pretty unsuccessfully, as Lepotica are very strong. Once it's dead though, they head down to find this dingy lab area. The cells are filled with other C-virus-based experiments. As they continue, Helena becomes kind of panicked, looking for somebody named Deborah, but she doesn't seem to be anywhere. They reach a room filled with cocoons and test tubes. On the table is a VHS tape labeled Happy Birthday Ada Wong. The video seems to show Ada hatching out of one of those cocoons. It's almost a mirror image of her emerging from that diving suit at the beginning of her campaign. She was naked both times, making Leon watch even closer. This is very confusing for Leon and Helena alike, and us. What exactly did we just witness? The room beyond is filled with even more cocoons, but they're not quite ripe enough yet to hatch. Leon and Helena find their way down into a cave system underneath the church, and they finally find out who Helena was looking for. It's her sister, Deborah. Helena still doesn't tell Leon what's going on, but he agrees to help escort her out. They don't get far before Deborah collapses, and then begins her own metamorphosis, becoming a cocoon. Well, Helena's dead sister is going to have to wait, because after sinking that submarine, Ada arrived at the chapel, aware of Simmons' lab beneath. Ada has to jump through a long series of hoops and solve multiple puzzles to make her way into the cave system. One of these puzzles rewards her with a Simmons family ring, which will be important later. The final obstacle are two zombies that have picked up two items needed to open the way. One has a gold tooth stuck in his mouth, and the other has a fake crystal eye in place of his. Ada has to dodge the many traps in the catacombs. There's also a couple whoppers here, which is weird because I don't know many dead bodies that have a lot of fat left on them. Finally, though, she unlocks the way and finds herself overlooking Leon, Helena, and her transforming sister. The second that Deborah hatches from her cocoon, Ada puts an arrow between her eyes, killing Helena's sister right in front of her. As Helena clings onto her sister's body, she comes back to life and grows 3 insect arms from her back, trying to kill Helena. Leon and Ada manage to get her off, but Deborah knocks down a pillar, collapsing the floor beneath. Twice that's happened now. They descend further into the cave where the actual fight starts, and let me tell you, this fight is some freak shit. So Deborah's mutated form is basically just a grey, naked one with insect arms. And during the fight, she'll just feel herself up, even when she's currently on top of you, attacking you. Pretty strange, but the 3 manage to shake her off and get on a minecart. The first obstacle on the minecart is just ducking to avoid low-hanging planks. They manage to fight her off again as the cart's tracks abruptly end, spilling them all off a cliff. Ada's left clinging to a ledge for her life while Deborah stalks her way up to her sister. Leon helps Ada up and the 2 manage to stun Deb and send her stumbling off a ledge, finally forcing Helena to let her sister go. We see a cutscene of how Simmons got to Helena. He kidnapped her sister and threatened to kill her unless she helped him kill the president. Now, it's not like Helena did the job herself. What she was supposed to do is, as a Secret Service agent, make sure there was a gap in the president's security large enough to infect him with the C-virus. She apparently had second thoughts, though, as in the beginning we saw that she had rushed back to try and save him, only to find that it was too late. It was all for nothing anyway, as Simmons had already infected Deborah with the new virus. Let's let Helena grieve, as Ada has a phone call to answer. The call is from Simmons. He tells Ada to proceed into the research lab, there's something there he wants her to see. Ada doesn't have any better ideas, so she finds a way back into the lab. That way introduces us to a new enemy type, the Whopper Supreme, an even bigger and better version of the Whopper. All they are is really 12 feet tall Whoppers, but I thought the name was funny enough to mention them. Past the Burger King, Ada ends up in that part of the lab with all the cocoons, except now they've ripened and begin to hatch, unleashing a shitload of Napod on Ada. Beyond them, Ada finally finds what Simmons wanted her to find, is that VHS tape showing herself crawling out of a cocoon. Seeing this sparks a revelation in Ada, and when Simmons calls her again, she reveals what she's concluded.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it you on this tape, Ada? You're the one behind Neo Umbrella.
I...
Don't know what you're talking about. Simmons would never be foolish enough to show his cards. He and his family want one thing.
To stabilize and sustain the system they've created.
But you want to destroy it. And the world will blame you.
So there's 2 Ada Wongs, the real one and the C-virus creation. It was fake Ada, or Carla Radams, who betrayed the BSAA back in Europe. This is actually a pretty big reveal that you only explicitly learn in Ada's campaign, which is meant to be played last. So through most of the game, you're meant to be confused why Ada continues changing sides and clothes. Real Ada wears a red jacket, fake Ada wears a purple dress. Anyway, let's talk a little more about this. So Simmons belongs to an organization called the Family, basically a secret society founded during the earliest days of America that now has a lot of influence over the country. Carla Radames was a genius researcher working on BOWs for the Family. She created the C-virus with samples of T. Veronica from Manuela Hidalgo and samples of the G-virus from Sherry Birkin. Now, while Simmons liked her as an employee, Carla liked him a little more than that. Simmons, on the other hand, was obsessed with Ada, who he had worked with at various points. He wanted to prove the C-virus potential by making an exact clone of Ada Wong, and Carla volunteered thinking it would get Simmons' attention. In 2009, she underwent the procedure, and when she hatched, Simmons more or less brainwashed her to believe that she was the actual Ada Wong, and his sex object. Carla's conditioning eventually started to break, though, and she escaped the Family and founded Neo Umbrella. So we have 2 separate organizations here, both causing destruction around the world, and both fighting each other. The man himself, Derek Simmons, radios Leon and Helena to accuse them of being involved in the president's death. That's kind of true for Helena, but Simmons forced her to do that. So Leon and Helena have become fugitives, but for now they need to worry about escaping the underground. These catacombs are a trap-filled nightmare, but Leon can use that family ring that Ada gave him to unlock a massive door that will, eventually, lead out of this place. The way out is flooded, though, and there's some kind of massive creature in the waterway. Helena and Leon manage to elude it, but find themselves in these perilous walkways with whoppers lurking at the end. I don't know how they got there, but they seem to have been waiting for a moment just like this. When they try to lower a bridge, the whole structure collapses and spills them back down into the water. The creature attacks again and it turns out to be this fucked up looking shark called Brzak. That means fast, or maybe rapids in Serbian. The strangest thing about the shark is that it was once human. The C-virus works in mysterious ways. While Leon and Helena manage to escape its grasp, Helena gets on dry land, but Leon has to swim his ass off trying to avoid the shark and his weird glowing tongue, while Helena covers him. I mean, the button mashing is crazy, but Brzak knocks them all the way down another underground river, and you have to fight him off while sliding down the waterway. Here we get to see that Brzak's weird giant fins also serve as feet, as he can drag himself forward using the walls. With an explosive barrel, Leon and Helena manage to shake off Brzak and get spilled out into a river in the mountains. From a safe distance, they witness the Air Force nuke Tall Oaks, ending the second outbreak much like they did with Raccoon City. A lot of good the BSAA turned out to be, I mean, they didn't even show up. The FBC would never have let this happen. I mean, if only they wouldn't have conspired with terrorists to increase their own funding. Hunnigan calls Leon and Helena. She doesn't believe they actually killed the president and tells them that Simmons is leaving for China. She informs them of a currently unfolding bioterror attack happening over there, but the two decide to pursue Simmons and prevent what happened here from happening in China. So what exactly is happening in China? Well, 6 months ago, Chris Redfield got his chest caved in and watched most of his squad die screaming. So he spent the time since rotting away in bars and drowning his grief with booze. Piers is there with him, but Chris doesn't even recognize him as he harasses the bartender. Piers presses him, but Chris can barely remember who he is or what happened. The entire bar turns out to be BSAA agents, all here to force Chris to return to the fold and get his life back on track. Now back in the fold, we finally learn why the BSAA failed to respond to one of the biggest bioterror attacks since Raccoon City. It's because their bosses got kidnapped in China. The BSAA is ran by the UN, and multiple UN officials have been kidnapped and are being held hostage in Longxiang, China, a fictional city based on Hong Kong. Chris is back in command and he's actually leading a pretty sizable BSAA force. Now back to what I said earlier. Technically, it makes sense that the BSAA is here as they are a multinational force, however every single BSAA soldier in the game is American. So it's kinda like, why wouldn't China's BSAA agents respond to this while America's agents went to Tall Oaks? We saw in RE5 that Africa had their own set of BSAA agents separate from the Americans, but I guess they didn't want to include any Chinese agents. Anyway, we're back to fighting Juavo, and they've made a pretty big mess here as the city burns around them. As Chris and his Alpha team continue, they hear over the radio that other BSAA teams are getting fucked and have to retreat. Alpha team loses almost all of their men in their advance, so it ends up just being Chris and Piers who arrive at the building where the UN officials are being held. Command orders the Bravo team to peel off and help them as they get attacked by a swarm of Juavo. Some of them mutate into a variation called No Galette, which means leg flight. The name comes from their leg mutating into a moth-type thing, and leaving the body hanging underneath. Chris and Piers hold out on their own for a while until finally Bravo arrives and kills the rest of the Juavo. These Juavo are Neo Umbrella, but they're not quite the weird frog suit guys Ada fought earlier. The building inside is extremely crowded, and the hostages are spread out across the various floors. Holding the hostages and clinging onto the roofs are the Nogratronchi, which means legs running. Their lower halves become the body of a spider. They literally just run around clutching onto the UN people until you manage to chase them and kill them. As the rest of the BSA extracts the hostages they recovered, Chris and Piers go on their way to find the final hostage on the first floor. They come in from above and there's this Call of Duty-ass slow motion sequence as they secure the final hostage. As they hand off the hostage, the BSA authorizes the building to be bombed. Cool. Except Chris and Piers' slow asses don't manage to get out before the building collapses right in front of them, trapping them inside. They have to get to the third floor to escape, but BSA command doesn't seem to care enough about them to stop the bombing of the building. It seems in 6 months they put much less importance in the life of their soldiers. Chris and Piers barely escape the building as the missile strikes finally bring the place down. The sight of some of those Sea-Virus cocoons in the wreckage sparks Chris's memory, and he finally remembers the whole failed mission 6 months ago. Now that Chris is remembering that, do you remember what happened 6 months ago? Well, Sherry and Jake got kidnapped by fake Ada and Neo Umbrella, after which they were taken to this insanely white facility. Like, literally everything in this place is white. I get wanting things to be sterile, but this is a little excessive in my opinion. Jake gets escorted out of his vault at gunpoint, but he decides this time will be different. Now you might be watching this and wonder why the guards don't just shoot him, but it's definitely because they get in trouble for killing the test subject. Anyway, Jake doesn't just pick up one of their guns, instead you have to use this janky-ass hand-to-hand combat system. He takes down the guards and grabs a keycard that allows him to shut off the power in another area, the area where Sherry is being held. Sherry and Jake have to fight their way out separately, but Jake can help her using some turrets control from a security room. Finally, the two link up in a locker room and find all of their gear weirdly just stashed there. Jake says that Neo Umbrella used his blood antibody to enhance the Sea-Virus, and also that they told him who his father was.
I guess he had an antibody that could fight off any virus. Apparently, he abused his gift. Took it for granted. And then ended up turning himself into some kind of monster. You know, I thought dear old dad was just a deadbeat who skipped out on us. No. He was actually a freaking nut job who almost destroyed the world.
Jake is pretty distraught that his dad was Mr. Eugenics and wanted to kill billions of people, but Sherry has a similar story. Wesker and William Birkin came up in Umbrella together and they were pretty good friends. While Birkin didn't quite go to the same extent as Wesker did, he did cause the Raccoon City outbreak, so... Anyway, the lab emerges into this very fancy casino hotel type building. But before they can leave, Sherry needs to find a phone to call the government and let them know she's still alive. In order to do that though, you need to find 10 of these little tokens that some important Juavo carry around, and there are also just a lot of them laying around. Once 10 have been found and put into the statue in the entrance, the way to the communication room opens up. She downloads Jake's research data before dialing up the NSA. They're surprisingly unfazed at her 6-month disappearance, but they told her to meet them nearby in China. On the way up though, a whole ass tank busts through the door and forces them to flee out a back way. The tank shows up again and you have to use it and its dumbass driver to rotate the statue to allow Jake to hop over a gap and find a motorcycle that he and Sherry can finally use to escape. One thing you can't escape though is your past, and that's what Chris is going through as he remembers what Ada did to him and his squad. She's been sighted in the city multiple times at this point, so Chris decides to take Piers and his squad to find Ada and get revenge. As the squad moves out, they're sneak attacked by some kind of giant invisible snake. Enraged by seeing another of his squad die, Chris chases after it. They rush after it, fighting past hordes of Joavo in an attempt to kill the thing. Elsewhere in the city, Jake and Sherry head towards a meetup spot with Simmons, but they're attacked by a Neo Umbrella helicopter on the highway. Jake drives while Sherry shoots the occasional obstacle in their way. Sherry and Jake try to shake the helicopter but end up crashing in an alleyway. The helicopter is still above them, so they're fucked, right? No, because just as the helicopter pulls up, Chris and his squad arrive overlooking the alleyway. A new type of Joavo appears here, one that have their legs mutate into grasshopper parts called Nogaskanji, meaning leg jumping. With the Adonian squad reunited, they manage to take the heli down after a very annoying section, where it switches between two areas, one containing Jake and Sherry and the other with Chris and Piers. Once it's down, Chris stares at Jake like he knows something, maybe starting to see the resemblance with Chris's old enemy, Wesker. Either way, the BSA team continues their search for the massive snake, with Chris getting more and more reckless as he loses more and more soldiers.
What the hell were you thinking, pulling a kamikaze stunt like that?
These are my men. You follow my lead or I'll find someone who will.
With only a few men left, Chris and team finally get the snake in a fair fight. Kinda. It'll try to ambush you, but when it attacks it loses invisibility. This thing is called Illusija, which means an illusion. It's another Seabride's creation, much like a giant shark thing Leon faced. Chris, Piers, and one final agent named Marco managed to drive it into this little maze where they can use some exposed live wires to cook the snake alive. Now that all but one of their squad is dead, Piers says they need to get out before they all die, but before Chris can tell him off, Ada strikes again. Fake Ada injects their last man with the C-virus, turning him into another of those Nesdo. Chris and Piers once again have to kill one of their transformed men, and Piers lays into Chris.
What happened to the legendary Chris Redfield, huh? What happened to you? It's a good thing Finn's not around to see you this way.
Despite Piers' shaming, Chris is still determined to kill Ada. He radios HQ to get a location and they report she's heading towards the harbor. Is she though? Because the real Ada Wong works above another BSA squad and hears the transmission. She's also going after fake Ada. She obviously can't work with the BSA on that. Sorry to jump around again, but somehow Leon and Helena boarded a plane heading for China. I have no idea how they managed it or why there are even planes running between the two countries, given that both are dealing with viral outbreaks, but here we are. They're determined to make Simmons pay for what he did to the president, but a little hiccup in the road happens when one of the pilots hatches into a Lepotitsa. Probably the last thing you'd want to see on a plane.
I don't suppose I think you can fly a plane, do you?
The two manage to force it into the vents of the plane. It's a very large plane, by the way, but Hennigan tells them they need to get to the cargo bay of the plane to fix a pressure leak before the plane goes down. The second that they do that, the gas zombie appears once again and floods the plane with a viral gas. What you have to do is stun it long enough to open the cargo bay of the plane and send the creature tumbling down into the city below. I'm gonna be honest with you here, Leon. I feel like that's the last thing you should do with a monster that secretes zombie gas. But everyone on the plane got turned, so Leon and Helena have to fight the cockpit, where Leon has to prevent the plane from crashing completely, and only kind of crash it into a shipping bay. Everyone else witnesses the plane crash, but not much they can do about it. Ada, on the other hand, will directly have to deal with the consequences of Leon's actions. She makes her way through the city, only being halted when Cocoon hatches into a new and very strong enemy. It kinda just looks like a messed up human, except for the fact that one of its arms has mutated into an organic chainsaw. It's called Ubistwo, which means murder. Ada tries to avoid that fate, but eventually gets cornered in a plaza. In the center of the plaza is where the Lepotitsa landed, and lo and fucking behold, Leon, it turned a bunch of people into zombies. This is the second time that man has been irresponsible with one of these things, but adding to the danger is when the Chainsaw Man reappears and Ada has to fight it. She downs it, but only for a moment as the creature attacks her once again on top of a bus. I don't know who's driving this bus, but all it has to do is wait for the murder to be knocked down by a couple low-hanging signs. She once again tries to escape, and the monster corners her on some train tracks. Ada has to hold the Ubistwo off for a while until she can finally get it hit by a train, knocking it down and out of sight. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Well, not for Jake and Sherry, as Ada just dumped the monster directly in their path. Jake and Sherry have their own fight with the murder, eventually take it down, just as Leon and Helena's plane crashes right in front of them. The two crawl out of the wreckage, and the two Raccoon City survivors are finally reunited. Sherry works for Simmons, but Leon and Helena are trying to kill the man, so there's an obvious conflict there.
I'm tracking the man behind all this. Chief Security Advisor Simmons.
What? There must be some sort of mistake. I report to Simmons.
He's your supervisor?
We're on our way to meet with him right now.
Where is he? I need to know.
Jake!
But before they can work through their differences, guess who's back?
Him again? Friend of yours?
More like an ex-girlfriend. Guy doesn't know when to quit.
Welcome to the club.
Usti has come for Jake's bitch ass once again, but the four manage to shoo him away for a second. While Leon and Cherry open the way forward, Ustanak seizes the opportunity and attacks Jake and Helena with a new grenade launcher hand. He also has a perfectly human-sized cage on his back, so you know where Jake is going if they lose here. Leon and Cherry break down a wall and rejoin the fight, and Ustanak is once again overwhelmed. An explosion brings down a tower on top of the mutant, getting rid of him, but also separating Leon and Helena from Jake and Cherry. Cherry does manage to tell Leon where she's meeting Simmons, though, so the two groups have to take separate paths to get there. Leon and Helena end up at a weirdly empty fish market. Inhabiting the market is a strange new enemy. They're called Rothklapanji, which means taking part or dismantling. If I had to describe how they look kind of like the weird fetus thing from PT.
You got fired, so you drowned your sorrows in booze.
There's no way to actually kill them. What you can do is dismantle them and then damage the parts until they shrivel up. That gives you a little while to breathe before they regenerate. They can take their hands off to pursue you, and when you do enough damage, the top and bottom parts split in two, so you have to kill those as well. They have to deal with a couple of these while searching for some keys to a thick metal door. Behind the door is a warehouse, and they see Ada stepping to a doorway. This is fake Ada, but neither of them know the difference. After their argument, Chris and Pierce fight their way through a shipyard packed with Juavo, culminating with another chopper attack. Chris is not to be stopped though, so they take it down and continue on until they find themselves at the door of a medical research center, another C-virus research site. They step inside and see fake Ada. Chris immediately opens fire but does not land a single shot. This alarms Leon because somebody's shooting at his girl, but Ada gets away and both parties give chase. The kind of cool thing about this part is that who gets to where first depends on how good you are at the game. Here's how I think it happened. Chris and Pierce avoid a laser trap and reach an elevator taking them to where Ada fled to. Leon and Helena follow behind, but Fada ends up trapping both parties in these rooms and deploys these little explosive Roombas. If you shoot them, they change direction and go into the wall to the other group's room, and again, who goes where here depends on how good you are at the game. Pierce and Helena both work on opening the door, while Leon and Chris protect them. I'm gonna say again that Chris and Pierce both got out first though, as they managed to corner Fada on the walkway, but before Chris can get his revenge, Leon catches up.
Chris? Leon? What are you doing here? Put your gun down, Chris. She's a key witness. We need her.
A witness? She's the one who did all this!
No, it wasn't her. It was Simmons, the National Security Advisor.
I lost all my men because of her!
And I lost over 70,000 people, including the president, because of Simmons.
That moment is such fan service, but it's cool anyway. To Chris, she's the woman who killed his friends and ruined his life, but to Leon, she's a bad bitch who saved his life many times now. Unbeknownst to him, though, that is not the Ada that Leon knows, that's Carla, and Leon's distraction lets her hit the group with a flashbang and get away. Chris and Leon have to set their difference aside for a moment as Leon needs to get to Simmons before Sherry, and Chris needs to catch Ada. If I had to say who would actually win in a hand-to-hand fight, it's tough because Leon's kicks are deadly, but Chris punched a boulder in RE5, so I don't know. Anyway, Chris and Pierce find a Humvee with a mounted gun on it to pursue Ada and her sports car. Now, I don't know where she got that fucking car, but it takes more bullets than Juavo Humvees to try to stop Chris and Pierce from catching her. Pierce calls himself the best driver in the BSA, but I don't know, man. When I took the wheels, Chris actually managed to get ahead of Carla, the woman we're supposed to be chasing. I'm gonna call her Carla from now on because pretty soon her and the real Ada are gonna be in the same location. Anyway, they chase her onto an aircraft carrier but crash and burn in the process, allowing Carla to escape further into the ship while Chris and Pierce writhe in pain. After downing the chainsaw monster, Jake and Sherry continue out into a waterway, only for the murder to return for more. Watching their back though is the real Ada Wong, who snipes the creature and stuns it for like a second. This thing is stupidly tough. Its durability definitely isn't an excuse for the devs to reuse the same boss fight like 4 times. So Jake and Sherry have to steer around the ship while occasionally having more fights with the murder. They manage to electrocute it again and send it falling into the water, but again it's unfazed. Jake and Sherry have to fight it off a couple more times as they reach the shore near their rendezvous point with Simmons. Jake gets off the ship, but Sherry is saved by Ada a moment before the ship sails right into the blades of a helicopter, finally killing the Obistvo. With her good deed done for the day, Ada finds a jet ski that she can take to her and cross her ship, and hopefully put an end to the false allegations. After unknowingly saving the villain of the game, Leon and Helena make it to Simmons' meetup point, finding themselves facing down Simmons and a gang of his family's men. Cherry is really starting to doubt her former boss, but she and Jake decide to go to the meetup spot anyway, coming in just in time to see Leon held at gunpoint.
Timing. Kindly take these two into custody, won't you?
They said you were involved in the terrorist attack. Is it true?
What? Are they running down the street, screaming it to anyone who'll listen?
Answer me!
It's for the benefit of the United States and global security.
Can't see how killing the president is good for the country!
The president's dead?
Well, we have Leon to thank for that.
God damn you, Simmons!
Dispose of them. Hold your fire! Those two are still of use to us.
Sherry hands Leon the research data on Jake, and the two Secret Service agents cover her and Jake's escape. Simmons thinks he has the upper hand until one of Carla's men finally gets revenge on the man.
She got me.
Leon and Helena chase the rapidly mutating Simmons onto a train, but Jake and Sherry find themselves ambushed by another group of Neo-Umbrella and Juavos who capture them both yet again. Ada finds her way onto the carrier ship. It's populated by Neo-Umbrella's best, those frog suit guys from the submarine. Her first obstacle is this lock that requires 3 passcodes, all of which are found on nearby Juavos. There's also a couple of the Rascalangi hanging around, but Ada manages to dodge them and find all 3 passcodes. After their car crash, Chris and Pierce find themselves facing the brunt of Neo-Umbrella's forces in the hangar bay. But the way is shut to them, so they have to blow up a wall with a ballistic missile found aboard. The Juavo respond in kind by dropping a fighter jet down to the hangar to shoot at the two. Chris and Piers manage to dodge it and make it out of the hangar where they hear Carla's voice over the intercom talking to Simmons.
I'm just giving you exactly what you gave me.
Simmons. At first, you'll be afraid. But don't worry. You're just becoming the monster you always were.
You and everyone else on the planet.
You and your family may have shaped the world into what
It is today, but starting tomorrow, it's all going to change.
It's kind of funny because Simmons cuts off the transmission before she finishes, so only Chris, Piers, and Ada actually hear the entire thing. Leon and Helena confront Simmons, and he finally reveals why he killed the president.
Are you here to avenge the president? Is that it? You fool. Had he disclosed the truth behind Raccoon City, the U.S. would have lost all its authority, and the global political order would have collapsed.
So to avoid one possible disaster, you create another, no matter how many people die?
He had to be stopped!
Protect American hegemony. Ada and Neo-Umbrella ruined everything though, and Simmons finally mutates into his complete form, which is like a flesh transformer. It's actually really cool, but his first form is this dog-like one. Leon and Helena fight him on the train until Simmons jumps to an adjacent one and transforms into a new form that has a spike gun on his back. Also very cool looking, but they have to fight him at range now as he's on one train while they're on the other. The entire fight, a helicopter has been following the train, one full of members of the family. They're discussed as Simmons drives them to abandon him to his fate. Combined with a bullet between the eyes by Helena, Simmons falls under the moving train and disappears beneath, derailing the train in the process and dumping Leon and Helena into the water. The real Ada emerges onto the deck of the ship, but as soon as she does, Chris and Piers come up an elevator behind her. Not knowing the difference, they pursue Ada through the ship, although she's always one step ahead of them. Ada makes her way into the captain's cabin where she finds recordings from the experiments that created Carla.
No, that's not good enough! That's not Ada Wong! Why won't it work?
Combine the DNA sequence with the cocoon's biostructure.
Find another subject!
Use Carla for the next pass. She's a close match. Be careful what you say around her.
I don't want her catching on.
Chris and Piers catch up with Ada, although it's not the one they were just chasing. Ada taunts Chris and reveals her plan. She's going to launch C-virus missiles at cities across the world, destroying it all in a flood of zombies. But before she can gloat anymore, the family strikes back. Piers recovers a vial of enhanced C-virus to analyze, and they radio BSA leadership for help stopping the missile strikes, so they're too pressed around the rest of the city. It's up to Chris and Piers to find a way to make it to another aircraft carrier and stop the launch. They need to find themselves a plane, but back on the ship's deck, Ada witnessed Carla fall to her death. Ada goes down to investigate. She's sympathetic to Carla for what Simmons did to her, but Carla's not dead and she doesn't need Ada's pity. Before her death, Carla injected herself with one of the advanced C-virus syringes, having given Simmons the other. She melts away into this weird white substance that definitely doesn't look like another white substance. But Carla's lost her damn mind, and despite facing down the actual Ada Wong, she still believes herself to be the real one. Ada has to get through the whole of the ship while Carla's weird mutated self starts to absorb the ship. Certain walls will be covered in hands that try to grab you, and she'll occasionally spawn out little cum clones to slowly pursue Ada. The only way to destroy Carla's growth is with liquid nitrogen canisters scattered around the ship. This all culminates with Carla manifesting a giant face in Ada's way. Behind the face is a big sash of liquid nitrogen. Poor placement there, Carla. You have to shoot through her face and make a hole wide enough to hit one of the canisters behind her, damaging Carla enough to allow Ada to get to a helicopter and escape the rapidly sinking ship. Carla probably isn't dead, but I can't see her non-solid body being able to make it out of the ocean anytime soon. Chris and Piers also need to escape the ship, but keeping them is that exact same 3 password lock Ada has to get past earlier. Ada already killed the captains who had the passwords, but the Raspulangi have taken over in their absence. The Unfolders almost managed to knock Chris and Piers into a pit of molten metal, but they finally reach a fighter jet. A long time before Wesker, the BSA, and even Stars, Chris was an Air Force pilot, so he takes the wheel. Chris's jet and Ada's chopper leave the carrier at the exact same time, however they have different destinations. Chris and Piers fly over to the nearby aircraft carrier, however it's protected by helicopters and anti-air guns. You have to destroy the guns first, which is pretty janky with the fighter jet controls. Once you do, Chris drops Piers off to manually stop the launch of the missiles. Just in time, another Augur man emerges from under a giant tarp on the ship. I don't know why you would keep one of these on a ship, but Chris has to keep the giant BOW off Piers as he disarms the missile. Piers manages to stop the launch and get back to the jet without getting eaten by the ogre, but the second he does, the launch resumes. Chris and Piers have no choice but to destroy the missile in the ocean, but that fat-ass Augur man won't get out of their way in time, and one missile successfully launches from the ship. After their fight with Simmons, Leon and Helena washed up on shore next to a BSA convoy currently evacuating civilians. With Simmons seemingly dead, they decide to help them out, only to get a call from Hunnigan saying that Sherry and Jake have been taken to an underwater oil rig off the coast. That's the least of their worries though as Leon gets another call, this one from Chris.
Redfield. Leon, where are you? Chris, we're just outside of Tachi. Why?
Get the hell out of there!
The gas spreads across the city, killing tens of thousands every second. If you really think about it, it's all Leon's fault for not letting Chris kill Carla back there. I'm exaggerating as the Umbrella likely would have launched the missiles anyway if she died back there. So Leon has once again found himself in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, but he finds the time to tell Chris about Jake and Sherry and ask him to rescue them. He also breaks the news to tell Chris about who Jake's dad is, and Chris tells him what happened to Carla, who they both believe is Ada.
Thanks.
Leon, wait. Something I need to tell you. Ada Wong is dead.
So Leon and Helena have to flee the high ground with the remaining BSA agents, who over time become very few. They eventually reach a Humvee with a BSA agent, who immediately begins tweaking at the first sight of a couple zombies.
No! Get back! Die!
The agent takes them close to a massive skyscraper called Quad Tower, the highest point in the city and the place where the BSA would evacuate them. As soon as they exit the vehicle, an oil tanker blows up in their face and knocks the two out for a minute. In that time, they get surrounded by a horde of zombies, but a helicopter above them comes to their rescue. The pilot is Ada Wong, the one and only now. With her man safe, Ada looks for a high place to land the chopper, but Neo and Umbrella launches their own set of helicopters to take her down. She takes down another of those attack choppers. At this point, Neo and Umbrella is down billions of dollars, before she heads off to find Leon once again. Those two are limping their way through the city until they arrive at a crowded street where a BSA helicopter lands to pick them up. For some reason, this dumbass agent exits the helicopter and dies when a plane crashes and burns behind them. They really need to up their standards at the BSAA, but the helicopter ends up crashing anyway when the pilot turns into a zombie. It lands conveniently right in Quad Tower, but it doesn't look like there's many survivors to evacuate. That's the least of their worries though, because Simmons is not dead.
I know what you did. Ada! You disobeyed me. You took Wesker's son away! Use that bastard's blood to make the virus stronger!
Simmons transforms into a fleshy T-Rex this time, and it's up to Leon and Helena to fight him on ground level, while Ada hits him from above with the chopper. With enough damage, you can get him to turn human again and beat the shit out of him. Halfway through, a BSA agent rolls in to help them out, and like 90% of his comrades, he dies for the effort. Finally though, Ada, Leon, and Helena manage to kill Simmons once again. Ada heads to the roof to find a landing pad, so Leon and Helena head to an elevator to meet her. Ada decides to grow a heart for a minute as she helps out some civilians, knocking a lightning rod off one of the buildings in the process. As she lands, Leon and Helena's elevator gets derailed by Simmons, who's back once again. Ada watches from a nearby catwalk and manages to draw Simmons' attention away from the others, who are stuck climbing a stupidly long elevator cable. Simmons takes his dog form again and Ada has to hold him off, but he gets distracted by Leon and Helena still climbing that long-ass cable. Now Ada has to cover them while Simmons tries to climb the building and get them. Just like an actual dog, Simmons doesn't have a great attention span, so he goes back after Ada, knocking her out and preparing for the killing blow. Leon and Helena finally climb that damn cable, while Leon jumps off into the walkway to help Ada, trying to wake her up as Simmons pelts his back with needles. Finally, she wakes up and the two are reunited to fight Simmons, just like the old days. Simmons manages to knock Leon off the ledge, but he gets so caught up in taunting him that Ada can come up behind him and push him off, saving Leon once again. The two still don't get to talk about their feelings for each other as Ada sends him a text message from a distance, telling him to get his ass to the roof and take her chopper out of here. Ada goes further into the quad tower to Carla's old lab where she has some kind of final magnum opus waiting. Ada's not having that shit though. She destroys the cocoon before it can hatch and burns all of Carla's research.
We're beyond sympathy at this point. We're beyond humanity.
Bringing us to the end of her story. I say Ada's campaign is the worst of all of them just because she kind of feels like a side character in her own story. She also just teleports between locations constantly. Like her first chapter was on a submarine in the middle of the ocean, and she teleported to Tall Oaks for a second, then the same with China in her third. Ada is always a really fun character though, so she has that going for her. Anyway, Leon needs to get to the roof and escape the city, however when he does we find that Simmons is still not dead. He uses these tendrils to impale zombies and add them to his own biomass. Leon and Helena manage to down him again, which prompts the horde of zombies to pounce on him and start eating him. Weird, but it allows them to escape. A couple minutes later, we find out what he was using all that biomass for, as Simmons has once again gotten a new form, this one as a gigantic fly creature. I think this design is so sick, it's second only in this game to something we'll see in Chris's campaign in a minute. The boss fight with the giant fly takes place on the peak of the quad tower where that lightning rod landed. You can shoot off the fly's limbs to stun it and then destroy its eyes, however Simmons will always grab new zombies and use them to regenerate. What you can do, however, is stick that lightning rod into a zombie which Simmons then integrates into himself, causing him to get struck by lightning. Sticking it into a zombie, then destroying his eyes, makes him integrate the rod into his eyes, electrocuting his giant fly and sending it falling down into the city. They finally reach the chopper, but Simmons comes back for more. Leon has to end him the same way he ended Mr. X over a decade ago, with an RPG to the face. On the seat of the helicopter is a data chip that Ada left Leon, proving Simmons' involvement and their own innocence. But while it may be over for Leon and Helena, Chris and Pierce have arrived at Neo Umbrell's oil rig and descended to the underwater facility. As they do, Chris decides that he's retiring from the BSAA and wants Pierce to succeed him. When they arrive inside the oil rig, they find a computer that unlocks the cell Jake and Sherry are held in, however doing so sets off an alarm and draws Neo Umbrella to their position. They fight through the last of the terrorists, eventually getting stuck in a room full of conveyor belts with cocoons on them. Joavo will pull levers, bringing a shitload of C-virus mutants into the room, but after a couple minutes, to escape into a giant chamber in the center of the oil rig. Elsewhere on the rig, Jake and Sherry escape from their cell and find their weapons in the adjacent room. They have a different path to take, one filled with so many Rustphalangi. They have to restore power to a central elevator, which takes them in this giant molten lava-like drill, or pump, or something. You have to grab onto the pump and allow it to take you to various floors to power on more generators for the elevator, fighting a shitload of the slug monsters on the way. Finally, though, the elevator powers on, the two arrive in the same central chamber with Chris and Pierce. Chris makes an interesting decision here and tells Jake that he was the one who killed Wesker.
I can see your father in you.
How did you know?
Wait, hold on a second. So you knew him?
Yeah, I did. But I'm the one that killed him.
It was you?
That's right.
Chris? Better put a leash on that puppy.
This is between me and him. Go ahead. Shoot.
You have every right to. Just promise me you'll survive. The world depends on it.
Who the hell are you to tell me what to do?
Stop it!
Put your gun down, now!
Tell me, we just following orders? Or was it personal?
Both.
Jake, please stop.
Put a bullet in your head!
Put your gun down.
Drop your
Don't do this!
We'll talk about that more in a minute, but for now the computer shows a projection of a 100% C-virus infection rate if the giant cocoon in the middle of the room hatches. There's not much I can do about that now though, as they need to send 2 separate elevators while fighting more Joavo. While they do, let's talk about Jake's weird-ass reaction to learning Chris killed his father. So we know Jake knows who Wesker was and what he wanted to do, which was kill billions of people. Now I know that learning someone killed your dad is pretty traumatic, however Jake never knew his dad, so I feel like his reaction is a little strange. Plus, Wesker killed almost all of Chris's friends in South, so even if he wasn't planning on destroying the world, he deserved it. Anyway, at the top of the elevator, the cocoon begins to hatch. Chris orders Sherry and Jake to escape as Jake holds the key to saving the world from the C-virus, while he and Piers deal with whatever comes out of that cocoon. They agree and the two go their separate ways, so what is inside the cocoon? It's called House, and it's probably my favorite Resident Evil design. House means chaos in Serbian, that's exactly what this thing was meant to do. House looks like a half-human, half-squid creature, but the coolest part of its design is the giant human skull hiding under its slimy face. We don't really know how they created this thing, which is why I think it's so cool. But if House manages to escape the oil rig, it's going to spread C-virus gas across the entire world once it matures. The missiles were only a distraction to ensure that the BSA didn't find House in time. For now though, Chris and Piers have to worry about their own escape as they flee from the massive creature. They escape the main chamber, but House pursues them to this drainage room where a fight starts. House is extremely strong, however to fit in this chamber it had to break off its lower half, leaving a weak spot open. They manage to down House, but they can't confirm the kill as the facility begins to fall apart around them. After House escaped, Jake and Sherry manage to run into another molten lava room where their good buddy appears for one final confrontation. Usti chases them across the walkways above the lava, now using a wrecking ball as his hand that he fills with lava. He eventually knocks them down to a platform where the real fight starts. Ustinek will occasionally break holes into the ground, causing lava to spill onto the platform, but enough damage allows Sherry to climb to his back and stun him with her taser. This lets Jake get in and tear off his hand, but Ustinek is undeterred. He slaps Sherry away and throws Jake into another walkway, kicking his gun off into the lava. The next part is so insanely goofy, but it's cool enough that I'll excuse it. Jake and Ustinek get into a fistfight and Jake starts beating his ass. Sometimes you just need to go with things, man, and while I could be a nerd and be like, well actually punching Ustinek wouldn't do very much because... But no, it's just fun to fistfight a giant C-virus tyrant. Jake wins the fight and knocks Ustinek down into the lava, burying him in the molten rock as a part of the ceiling comes down on top of him. Jake and Sherry board a tram to take them out of here that goes weirdly fast, but guess who's still not dead? I honestly wish that fist fight would have been the actual end, but now Jake and Sherry have to scamper up the tram away from the burning man. The tram was carrying crates full of weapons, one of which is a magnum. To finally end the mutant who's been harassing them for 6 months, they put a bullet in his heart and send him falling back down into the exploding tunnel. The oil rig is falling apart around Chris and Piers, but despite the fact the house is currently in open water and could go out and fulfill Kara's plans, the monster instead decides to attack Chris and Piers again. House manages to grab hold of Piers by his right arm. Chris shoots the creature to free his partner, but it throws Piers against the wall, cutting deep into the same arm. And House just has something against this fucking guy's arm because he finishes the job by completely impaling it with a piece of debris. While Piers bleeds out on the ground, House grabs Chris and do the same to him, forcing Piers to save his partner one way or another. Piers injects himself with the enhanced C-virus strain that they recovered from Carla. His arm turns into this electricity-producing weapon that stuns House in one shot. The door won't open until the room repressurizes, so Chris and Piers have to once again fight House. House is a lot smaller this time, as he seems to be able to change his size each time he re-enters his cocoon. What you have to do here is damage House enough to put him back into the cocoon, either with guns or with Piers' electricity. Then you can destroy his cocoon and leave House's 3 little hearts vulnerable. Rinse and repeat 3 times and House finally goes down, but Piers is not looking so good. Chris is determined not to leave Piers behind, so he basically drags the mutated man along with him to the escape pods. The way is blocked by sea virus growth that only Piers can destroy with his arm. They eventually reach the escape pods, with Piers looking worse and worse every second. When they finally find a pod, Piers refuses to let himself spread the virus they've been trying so hard to destroy.
Here we go, Piers. We're getting out of here.
Pierce! No, don't do this! Open the door! God damn it! Listen to me! We can still both get out of here! There's still time! What are you doing? No, Pierce! Don't! You can still make it out! God damn it, Pierce!
No! Piers, open the goddamn door! That's an order! No.
House returns, but in his last moments, Piers saves Chris's life one more time and kills the BOW for good. In the aftermath of the extremely hectic 6 months, we see where our characters end up after it all. Chris is back at that dive bar and he's decided not to retire from the BSAA. Sherry's back at her job with the NSA. Jake is back to being a mercenary, now fighting against BOWs in poor parts of the world for basically free. Leon cleared his own name in the president's death, also deciding to pardon Helena for her role in it. And this isn't really talked about, but they also discovered evidence of fake Ada, clearing the real Ada of any blame. So everybody got a good ending, except for Chris and Piers. Piers is presumed dead, although he may be chilling with Carla down in the ocean, and we'll see in future games how these events changed Chris. But that's the end of Resident Evil 6. I think the best way they could have improved this game is by cutting out Jake and Ada's campaigns and maybe releasing them later as DLC. And focus entirely on the two good ones, Leon and Chris, and make them stand out and be even better. But thank you all so much for watching. The next two games will be RE7 and 8, and I'm a little mixed about doing those because, like, who hasn't played RE7?
The investigating commission have reviewed the